Back in the wholesaling Stone Age, high tech was represented by the car phone that mounted in your trunk, a Kodak carousel slide projector, and a newfangled portable computer that weighed just less than a cinder block. Today's wholesaler has an amazing array of technological innovations that enable them to access previously unavailable data, stay organized in unimaginable ways, and connect to clients and prospects with lightning speed. Here in the 2020s, wholesalers who fail to embrace all of the technological opportunities available to their practice are simply destined to spend their time chasing the sales leaders that understand its power. I'm your host, Rob Shore, and this series of shows from Wholesaler Masterminds Radio is called Wholesaler Tech Talk, sponsored by YCharts. Our goal is to explore the technology behind the art, science, and lifestyle of wholesaling. So strap on your propeller caps as we dive in. In over 3 decades of wholesaling, I've never seen wholesalers more excited about technology. By presenting data-driven strategies accompanied by dynamic visuals, technology is enabling wholesalers to better market their products and reduce friction in meetings. That's why I'm excited to introduce you to YCharts, a sales enablement platform that provides the data and tools you need to demonstrate your fund's value to advisors. Using YCharts in real time, you can objectively compare managers' and competitors' strategies, discuss how economic conditions impact your funds, and pull up visuals to compare key data points. YCharts will elevate your distribution team's collaboration with tools that allow internals to push charts, comp tables, screens, and reports to externals on the road that enable more productive meetings and provide shareable content for value-add follow-up. And here's a special for you. YCharts is offering a free month to my listeners. Mention Wholesaler Masterminds when you email them at hello@ycharts.com or head to ycharts.com. Wholesalers, the amount of technology that you have at your fingertips is absolutely extraordinary. And sometimes I come across technologies that make me go, geez, I wish I had this when I was a wholesaler. Market metrics was one of them. When market metrics came to market and you could actually find out market share numbers of broker-dealers and broken down by offices, it was stunning. And I wished I had that when I was a wholesaler. And I had a similar reaction when I saw what was going on at YCharts. And yes, they are a title sponsor of this broadcast, but at the same time, I knew it was important to do a deeper dive on what was inside of the YCharts platform so I could better understand and help you understand the power that it could potentially add to your practice. That's why we have Dave Lubnik with us. He is the Vice President of Business Development at YCharts, and he leads their effort to form and grow strategic relationships with enterprise clients and industry partners. He's completed his undergrad at Notre Dame and his MBA at Chicago Booth. His career has included time at Goldman Sachs as a wealth advisor and at FactSet, working with large asset managers. When he's not at work, he enjoys traveling, sports, and spending time with his wife and 2 little girls. Dave Lubnik, welcome to Wholesaler Tech Talk.
Thank you, Rob, for having me. Great to be here.
It is delightful to be here, sir. Let's talk about YCharts. You know, when we had our pre-call, you were telling me about this kind of aha moment that you had because, you know, it's not always that you are on the distribution side of the sales cycle, right? So you're frequently on the advisor side. What was your aha moment? Tell us about that. How did you get to this place of courting and successfully integrating your product into distributors?
Yeah, that's exactly right, Rob. We've been around for about 10 years, but most of that time was focused on advisors using YCharts as a research tool. The aha moment really came to us about 2.5 years ago. The top wholesaler at one of the leading fixed income asset managers out there came across YCharts himself, as many people do, being that our founder of YCharts came from Google. We rank very highly with Google SEO. But this individual came across YCharts and loved what it could do for him on his iPad as he was traveling around meeting with advisors. And he reached out to us and said, hey, I think this is a great product. I'm a partner at this firm. I'd like to present this to my colleagues at our upcoming national sales meeting. Can you teach me the ins and outs of it? And I'm going to go get on stage and mention it to 60 other wholesalers. And at that moment, we thought to ourselves, wow, first of all, this is really cool. It's great to see that a wholesaler is finding such value in YCharts. Let's dig in, understand why he's seeing so much value in it. And then if he could use it, then it's pretty likely that others could use it as well.
Don't you hate when that happens? Don't you hate when somebody finds your product and then wants to become a Pied Piper inside of your whole inside of their whole organization? It's terrible when that happens.
Good problem to have.
I know. It's awesome. Let's elaborate on this problem that you're trying to solve for externals and internals and product specialists. What specifically is YCharts trying to get after? What's the pain point that YCharts is trying to solve for?
Yeah, I think you touched on a little bit in your opening. I think that the approach for wholesalers has been kind of the same for quite a while, and you're finally seeing this disruption take place amongst them, where, for example, people are now kind of routinely carrying iPads, something that maybe wasn't done even as recently as 3 or 4 years ago. It's not so much the round of golf and the steak dinner and the expensive bottle of wine that's going to win the business from an advisor. Now it's going to take an analytical conversation. Wholesalers frequently have had obviously materials on their own funds, whether that's the form of hard copies, and there's plenty of them that have showed me these massive binders that they're lugging to meetings, or maybe it's something electronic, but those are just on their own funds. They obviously can't have materials on all 65,000 funds that are out there. They obviously have internal resources as well, which are great, but those are limited as well. To be able to call an internal and ask them to run some type of Zephyr or Morningstar Direct report is great. It's great output that can be produced, but there's some friction involved with that phone call to the internal, with that request, with the time that it takes to process that request and get that report run. And then how do you get that report back in front of the advisor? Are they going to open that email and read through it? Are you going to try to schedule another meeting to meet with that advisor? How long is that going to take? So those are some of the kind of modus operandi that we saw with wholesalers in their current state. And with YCharts, we saw a big opportunity to disrupt that and provide them with a pretty easy to use and intuitive tool that would allow them to have a lot more dynamic conversations.
Yeah, there's a lot of meat on the bone about what you just said. First of all, I feel like you might be making fun of me because back in my wholesaling day, I did carry a 5-inch thick war book. So you're saying that is not necessarily required anymore. That's fine. I get that. I understand that. But the key word that I heard you say is friction. How can we take the friction out of the sales discussion? And that friction finds its place at a lot of inflection points in the sales process. But that's one of the things that I was so impressed about here with this particular delivery mechanism was taking that friction out, because I'm really aligning myself with what you're saying about, yes, it is powerful when the wholesaler says to the advisor, hey, you want me to run a Zephyr? But then there's this whole other sales track that has to take place about me getting back in touch to decipher what that Zephyr said. Zephyr's a fine organization. They produce great stuff, but it's delivered in a different method. So that is a very important point, wholesalers, to keep in mind as you're kind of evaluating whatever technology that you use. How well is it reducing the friction? Was there anything else about problems that you're trying to solve? Because I can think of a few that come to my mind, but was there anything else, I don't want to take words out of your mouth, Dave, that you're trying to solve for globally, technologically, when you think about the YCharts interface?
I think it's the marrying of the friction, which we're trying to remove, as well as the move towards the analytical conversation. Advisors, as well as wholesalers, are more tech savvy now. They want to have more advanced conversations. That could be as simple as, let's compare my fund to another fund that the advisor happens to mention in the meeting. But it could also get into risk metrics around that. It can get into macroeconomic views. Oftentimes the firm has views on the macroeconomy. They, again, might have white papers on those views, but they may not be married with an exact fund that we're talking about in a meeting compared to a competitive fund. And just the ability to put all that together in one place, really on an iPad, sitting face to face with that advisor, is the difference here.
One of the things you just said that was so interesting to me, the next question, wholesalers, that I was asked Dave is, how does the tool allow the wholesaler to stand out from the sea of sameness? And this is one of the things that I think Dave just spoke about, because and if you don't know, you should know that you should be moving to wholesaler as consultant. Not more wholesaler as sales professional, though you are there to sell, let's not make any mistake about it, but wholesaler as consultant. And if you are wholesaler as consultant, then you need a good grasp of lots of different data, how it's coming into you and how you are expressing that data back out to the financial advisor. That will lift you out of the sea of sameness. Being a better student of the business will lift you out of the sea of sameness. And if a piece of technology helps you get there, hallelujah. There's also something, Dave, about the sea of sameness, and I'd like to get your thoughts on that. And that is just the deftness, if you will, with which a wholesaler can operate on an iPad. And I realize, I'm not trying to sound draconian. I sit virtually any night with an iPad in my lap, so I understand the application itself. But in a one-on-one meeting, how do I integrate a tool like that during an advisor appointment without appearing clunky? How do I make the most of that? And I realize some of it's practice, but tell me more about that, because I don't want to appear as if I'm actually undermining the flow of the advisor conversation by using the technology that's supposed to be at my fingertips. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely, and that's a great question. That's something that comes up a lot with our clients. So first of all, it's obviously going to be training and support behind the product, but also there's a lot of ability within YCharts to save content. And what I mean by that is that before a meeting, you can put together a chart, and maybe that chart shows the 2-year treasury rate in a rising interest rate environment and how our core bond fund did in that same environment against a benchmark. You can create that, save it. And then in the meeting, all you have to do is open up a bookmark within your browser, or within YCharts, open up that saved template. Every time you open it, it's going to be refreshed with the most recent information. But a lot of wholesalers will create these libraries within their browser or within YCharts for these saved charts or screens or other features of the tool, so that in the meeting, they don't need to stumble through how exactly do I pull this up or adjust this feature of the tool. They can simply access these pre-saved templates.
It's probably like nothing. It's probably like everything else, right? It's going to be practice makes perfect, and you're going to have to look clunky the first couple of times. You're not going to be great at it the first. You're not going to look great at any technology the first couple of times you use it. You just have to, grin and bear it, get through the uncomfortable bit. That's a statement of the obvious, but I'm sure you agree. Yes.
That's exactly right. And also a large part of YCharts is also using it before and after meetings. So it's the preparation aspect of going into a meeting. Certainly in a meeting, you have it at your fingertips ready to go. But when you're inevitably sitting in that parking lot, killing time before you walk in the door at a particular advisory firm, opening up YCharts on your iPad, looking, for example, into our screening tool where you can filter down by a Morningstar category and then by a brokerage availability. So seeing only the funds available to the advisor at that particular firm and the particular platform. So for example, Morgan Stanley Select UMA or LPL SWM, then bringing in category ranks, fund flows, really figuring out the positioning for your fund that you want to talk about relative to competitors, then having that ready to go for that conversation. A lot of that is occurring even before the meeting starts.
Wholesalers, one of the things I want to do here is just take a bit of what Dave just said right there, and I want to elevate it, because Dave talked about, the time that you have to kill in the car before the appointments, and I appreciate the spirit with which he offers that. But wholesalers, you and I both know that's not the place you should be doing it. The place you should be doing it is in preparation for your meetings whenever that takes place. The office day the week before the meetings, the night before the meeting, the place where you're doing your advisor reconnaissance. This is where this tool comes in handy. If you can set up those types of screens that you want to have, those bookmarks that you want to enable when you're in a Morgan Stanley office, because you know that this particular broker dealer affords you an opportunity in this particular sleeve or this particular investment strategy, then that's the stuff you want to set up ahead of time. So again, I certainly appreciate, Dave, your notion about in the car, kind of on the fly, but wholesaler mastermind wholesalers need to be far more prepared than that. So we want them to be able to do it at that really organized place in their office day, and that's a great place to put your thoughts together for your week ahead. We talked about the whole data reducing friction, and do we miss anything there? And I'm going back in it, wholesalers, because it's on my list of questions here, and I just want to make sure because it's such an important point. Is there anything we missed about the whole friction thing? Because it's like this blinking headline. It's like this billboard that just stands out there. Is how can we reduce friction? I'm actually doing some work, Dave, with a nonprofit right now, and one of the things we're trying to reduce is friction between where the donate button appears on the website and how hard it is for me to receive $50 from a donor. It's that kind of friction, right? I don't want anything to stand in my way. Is there anything else that YCharts is helping me do here that helps me not stand in the way of the advisor appointment?
At the end of the day, it's limited time with that advisor, and how do you make the most of that time? How long did it take you to get that appointment with that advisor on the calendar? When is your next appointment with them? It probably takes a while to get that meeting. It's probably not going to be for a while to have that second meeting. So how do you maximize your time with the advisor face-to-face? It's being able to react on the fly when they mention another fund, when they want to talk about the economy, when they want to talk about putting a portfolio together. It's maximizing your effectiveness in the meeting and having YCharts at your fingertips to help you do that.
You know, if friction is one of the billboards that's flashing brightly, I think context is another word that's flashing brightly on the billboard. This notion of how can I add context to a product discussion? And wholesalers, you know, over the years, we've talked a lot about being a better student of the business. And Dave, this is the place where I'd like to talk about how am I better armed to speak about whatever it is I'm speaking about in terms of my strategy and put it in a better global framework that adds context.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, I think everybody has fact sheets on their funds, but those are only so good as the static metrics for that fund. How do you think about it in the context of a portfolio, a sleeve of a portfolio, the macro economy? So, for example, you have some type of fund that's related to commodities, being able to leverage a tool like YCharts to be able to look at charts that not just show performance of your fund, but of WTI, Henry Hub, Brent, price of gold, natural gas, whatever it might be, exchange rates, treasury rates, housing, whatever the focus of that fund might be, there has to be some type of macroeconomic factors. And to be able to leverage YCharts over 300,000 economic indicators to use those indicators to help tell the story of your fund or to help dissect and poke holes in a competitive fund, which inevitably is going to come up in that meeting.
What? And I appreciate that. I'm thinking about how that all plays together with this coordination of internal, external wholesalers. You know, we've spoken over the years about this importance of having a synchronized story about the relevance of a particular asset category, the relevance of a particular product in particular. What have you seen in best practices as to how a tool like this, a technology tool like this, enables the internal, the external partner to be speaking as one voice when it comes to communicating? How do they partner better using a tool like this?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think in having YCharts in the hands of both of them, it really equips them to act as a synchronized team. And that can be a few ways. It could be with the internal using YCharts as a prospecting tool to make phone calls. Let's uncover funds within a particular category at a particular brokerage platform that have been losing a lot of assets. And maybe our fund has been acquiring assets, and let's use that for some of those phone calls. Let's talk about performance or risk metrics on those phone calls. Let's actually use YCharts in screen shares. I see more and more firms enabling their internals to be able to do WebEx meetings or something similar, to be able to leverage YCharts on those phone calls. As well as then I would add a kind of a third leg to this stool of the portfolio consulting team or the product team. That team at an asset manager is oftentimes creating great content. They are the liaison between the wholesalers and the portfolio managers. They understand the stories behind these funds, how to position them, how to sell them. Those team members can create content in YCharts, share it with all of the internals and externals, so so that they simply then need to open it up from within YCharts to access it, and to have access to that pre-built content that is helping frame the story has been very popular and very impactful as well.
All of what you said was super important. And one of the things that you said really perked my ears up. And that was the whole notion of being able to do analysis of a particular managed platform or a particular approved set of funds at a particular broker-dealer and understand through all of these analytics where you have a leg up and how you can change the discussion because of all that data that you have. And that's super powerful.
Absolutely. I would also go back to the portfolios. I think portfolios are more and more a important part of the conversation, and that could be analyzing an advisor's current matrix, comparing it to a hypothetical, being able to do that in a meeting or having your internal do it through YCharts. That is where oftentimes there is friction, going back to that word, and a drag on how long it takes to produce those reports. There's a lot of portfolio functionality in YCharts to be able to sync up again, that internal and external. It's all about time. It's all about keeping the momentum going while the advisor is thinking about you, either in the meeting or right after the meeting, and being able to leverage that.
Mm. Should we add that as the third blinking light on the billboard? Momentum. We got friction, we got context, and we got momentum. Those are three really good words, I think.
I think those three items will lead to more sales.
Yeah. I got one last question for you. It's not on your list of questions I forwarded, but I'm really curious about it. And since I have a senior leader inside of FinTech, where are we going? What do you see ahead? What are some of the big developments that you see unfolding in front of you, in front of YCharts, that you're either going to be challenged to meet or, better yet, going to want to take advantage of and deliver back to our community of distribution? What's coming?
I certainly think the trend towards technology is here to stay. There's no way that's going away. It's going that direction. There's a number of other tools that are out right now. It could be as simple as a CRM tool to leverage for those conversations. There's also training tools and other types of products that we're seeing as complements to a product like YCharts. There's even basic tools like LinkedIn that you'll see wholesalers leveraging more and more now. I think that is the trend. I think that is one trend from a technology perspective. I think portfolios are certainly here to stay also, whereas a year or two ago, it felt like there was only maybe a handful of firms packaging their funds together into portfolios. Now it seems like virtually every firm is getting into it. If they're not in it right now, they're at least thinking about it. And those portfolios don't even necessarily need to be made up of all of their own funds. Oftentimes they have funds from other families in there, but packaging those together as solutions for the advisor seems to be a trend that we're seeing right now as well.
Wholesalers. Dave Lubnik is VP of Business Development at YCharts. Remember the three words that we formed as headlines here. We're talking about friction, being able to reduce the friction that takes place inside of the advisor meeting, add context around the product discussions that you're having, and build really good momentum. The one thing that wholesalers rue is the fact that they have a great conversation with an advisor and they can't bring it to the advisor actually dropping money into the particular strategy they're talking about. This helps continue the momentum to get business closed. Dave Lubnik, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Rob. Great to have.
Wholesalers, come back next time for another episode of Wholesaler Tech Talk at the new Wholesaler Masterminds radio show. Does this sound at all familiar? You've had a successful meeting with an advisor. You've made a note to reschedule her for another meeting next time you're in town. You place a call, you send an email or two, and you don't get a reply. And even though you intend to follow up to secure the appointment, the advisor drops off your radar. That, right there, is where Wholesaler Mastermind schedulers come in. We excel at what we call pleasant persistence, staying after your list of appointments to be scheduled with dogged determination, remaining consummately professional and, well, pleasant. We've scheduled over 46,000 appointments. How many can we schedule for you? Check out Wholesaler Mastermind Schedulers at WMMschedulers.com. That's WMMschedulers.com. You'll find all of our content at wholesalermasterminds.com, and the podcast can be found at iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play.